Horses. These majestic creatures have been celebrated in the ancient Rigveda more than 200 times. To our viewers, Rigveda is the first of the Vedic literatures ever conceived during the early history of India. Yet, not a single Indus Valley seal depicts this animal. Not a single terracotta figurine or a skeletal remain of a horse is ever found in Indus Valley. So, what does this mean historically? And why are horses so controversial? To understand this, we must go back to the very beginning, around 4000 to 3500 BC. The first culture to domesticate horses, as per genome sequencing, was the Central Asian Botai culture, located in modern day Kazakhstan. But these are not the same horses that we have today. The recent study by Dr. Orlando, which features about 100 plus researchers, have come to the conclusion that the modern horse actually comes from another domestication which happened somewhere around modern day Ukraine and started spreading around 2200 BC. According to this study, horses reached Bohemia, Lower Danube, and Anatolia only around 2000 BC. After this time, we started seeing spoked wheels, chariots, or horses from 2000 to 1800 BC. Note that this is also the same time when Harrapan or Indus Civilization went into decline. A common theory suggests that Indo-European migrants brought horses to the Indian subcontinent with their chariots. The Vedic culture not only mentions horses but also celebrates them. In contrast, the Indus Valley culture has no seals of horses, while depicting seals of all the other animals, such as elephants, tigers, rhinos, or even this unicorn seal, which is actually a nilgai. Not just that, but it is also missing any records of terracotta figurines or even a single skeletal remain, or even any burial grounds with skeletal remains of any horses. It's just not there in any of the Indus Valley sites. Meanwhile, we do start seeing a ton of horse skeletal remains after 1500 BC, which coincides with the arrival of Indo-Europeans into our subcontinent. This indicates that the Indus civilization existed before horses were introduced to the Indian subcontinent, and that they were brought by Indo-Europeans after or during the decline of Indus civilization. This is an important piece in the puzzle for understanding the evolution and history of horses in the Indian subcontinent. Now hold on before you start writing angry comments here, and let me explain why this point of view is controversial to certain groups. The debate surrounding the origins of horses in ancient India is a controversial one, particularly for those who subscribe to a conservative Vedic beliefs. According to their legends, the Vedic culture is the oldest in the world, and all the other cultures are said to have originated from it. This theory claims that the Vedic culture is 4.32 million years old. For this theory to be true, the horses of the Vedic literature need to exist during the Indus civilization era for the Vedic culture to be the oldest. However, as we have previously discussed, scientific evidence suggests that the horses were not present in ancient India until after the decline of the Indus Valley Civilization, around 2000 or 1800 BC, or even after that. This puts the Vedic culture in India significantly later than other ancient civilizations, such as the Mesopotamians and Egyptians. This fact contradicts the nationalist worldview and is therefore a highly controversial topic. Nationalists propose various counter-arguments to refute this evidence. Let's look into those. Number 1. Bhimbetka cave paintings of horses. One counter-argument proposed by the nationalists is the presence of horse paintings in the Bhimbetka caves. They argue that these paintings, which are estimated to be around 12,000 years old, prove that horses have always existed in the Indian subcontinent. However, it is important to note that the paintings at Bhimbetka were created across multiple phases, with the earliest phase not depicting any horses. The horse paintings that are present in the caves date back to around 300 BC, which is long after the Indus civilization disappeared and well after the Vedic culture took root in the Indian subcontinent. This suggests that the horse paintings were not created by pre-Vedic Indians. Number 2. Sonali Chariot. The recent discovery of the so-called Sonali Chariot is often touted as proof that the Indus civilization had horses. However, upon closer examination, the chariot is simply a name given to a cart found in an excavation. The cart was part of a burial ground, and as Vedic culture is centered around cremating their dead, this clearly shows that the cart or the Sonali chariot is pre-Vedic and existed around the same time as the Indus civilization. Another thing to note is that the wheels on the cart are solid, unlike the spoked wheels of real chariot used by Vedic or Indo-European cultures. In fact, no chariot has ever been found without spoked wheels. This suggests that the cart was likely pulled by an animal such as an ox rather than a horse. Also, this other image of the Sonali chariot is not even from India, it's from China. So, it has no relevance to the Indian context and ancient Indus civilization. Number 3. 34 ribs of horse in Rigveda. This is an interesting point of view. The Rigveda, an ancient text of the Vedic culture, mentions that the horse has 34 ribs, or 17 pairs of ribs. However, some argue that the Central Asian horses had 18 pairs. But this is a misleading narrative. It is important to note that different horse breeds can have varying number of ribs. In fact, there are breeds of Arabian horses that also have 34 ribs. This does not mean that all Arabian horses have 34 ribs, as some have 36. Furthermore, the Rigveda is not a single text written at one point of time. It evolved and was written down around 300 BC. The reference to 34 ribs in Rigveda could suggest that the Vedic Indians were importing horses from Arabia. The horse emerging from churned sea in the Indian mythos is perhaps a metaphor of importing horses as well. Number 4. That one bone specimen from Sukkotada. The Sukkotada horse bone, found at a site in Gujarat, India, is often cited as evidence for the early presence of horses in the Indian subcontinent. However, this argument is not as solid as it may seem. The carbon dating of the bone has been disputed, and it could very well be from a later time period. Additionally, the horse bone found at Sukkotada does not necessarily indicate domestication, as a similar bone structure also exists in other cousin families of horses, such as donkeys. Furthermore, the evidence of horse remains from the Indus Valley Civilization is inconclusive, as the bone fragment found at the site could have come from anywhere, making it difficult to establish a clear connection to the Indus Valley Civilization. In conclusion, while the Sukkotada horse bone may be intriguing, it is not definitive evidence. Also, the places where horses were domesticated first, we see hundreds of horse bone fragments. Meanwhile, here we just have one. In conclusion, while the Sukkotada horse bone may be intriguing, it is not definitive evidence of early horse domestication in the Indian subcontinent. And so, we come to the realization that the horses of the Rigveda were not a part of the Indus Valley Civilization, and that the ancient Vedic culture, far from being the oldest in the world, was in fact a latecomer on the historical scene, trailing behind the likes of Mesopotamia and Egypt. But who needs facts when you have legends, right? Thanks for watching and see you next time.